computer. Okay, so I'm going to get started now. And Bert, your question was, have we had an uptick in the number of 30-day notices coming in? I have had a few where people have said that they're departing and they just can't stay. I had one where a tenant said, I need forbearance in April, and I'm going to try to find another job. And then he came back and said, look, I know I'm not going to have a lot of luck finding another job right now, and it's going to be a difficult time. So I think I'm just going to take off. And, I'm going to turn this into my 30-day notice for the end of April and go peacefully instead of continuing to stay and continuing to ask for forbearance into May and June while my chances of not getting a job are not good. And I'm just going to move back to back with my family in Texas. So, I'm seeing more of that. And we have, a few customers, a few clients who have, we're doing some things that that are totally different than what we would have ever done before. And we're hoping and trying to be very optimistic that maybe we'll be more successful with these sorts of things. And that the rent board won't penalize us for them. But for example, we had a larger unit, a 3-bedroom unit renting for a good price where the master tenant had 2 subsequent occupants, 2 unauthorized occupants who were interested in staying. And so they approached us and said, look, our master roommate is leaving. Are you interested in negotiating with us? Sure, we're interested in negotiating this. They said, but we're going to be without 1/3 of the rent. We have jobs, but we're going to be without 1/3 of the rent for a while. And Bert, this may be something we have to consider for your building as well. And we actually signed a new lease and immediately entered into a forbearance agreement where the owner agreed to waive several months of rent right up front and accept 2/3 of the rent, figuring that it's better than 0 with a vacant unit for an extended period of time. And that's not the kind of thing we would have done even in the financial downturn, in like 2008 or the .com bust or any of those times. So this is totally new territory. While we're, I think there may be a few more people coming, but while we're waiting, I also, I'll just let everybody know our statistics for rent collection from last week. We ended up with only about 6% of tenants who asked for forbearance in residential properties. And honestly, most of those tenants, the majority of those tenants were actually East Bay tenants, not San Francisco tenants. We had a very high level of people who were, coming to us and letting us know that it might be a problem, but that they were going to be able to pay, at least for April. I'm anticipating that May could turn out to be the beginning of a decline in those numbers, and I'll keep updating them and providing them to you about the 10th of the month when statements are published. Commercial tenants have been much more hard hit. 2/3 of my commercial tenants have paid less than their full amount, and many of those paid 0. And so things are difficult, but we are working with people to try to get back on track. Politically, this is definitely a time when people are trying to do everything they can to protect their constituents. The politicians are. We have a couple of proposals that are on the table this week. Dean Preston put a proposal on the table that would this week that would essentially eliminate our ability to perform any eviction for any amount of rent that is unpaid as a result of this crisis in the future, so that the arrangements that were delineated by the mayor's order and that are spelled out by the governor's eviction moratorium would then be undercut and further strengthened for tenants' rights to say, look, you can carry balance all you want, you'll never actually be able to evict anybody for it, which I don't know how many of us would actually end up evicting tenants in the long run, unless there was a clear pattern of trying to take advantage of a situation. I just don't see that happening yet. Most people have been dealing with this in a very straightforward way. At the state level, Phil Ting introduced a piece of legislation that would basically mandate a 25% across the board rent reduction for all tenants, which, people that I've talked to about this particular piece of legislation, they say it's not going anywhere, and it's basically just grandstanding for, whatever his next, the job he's got his eye on next would be. So, we don't really have a way of saying, what the motivation behind that is, or why 25% makes any sense or anything like that. But it's interesting that that's the kind of thing that's being proposed. They're working right now to make it clear to the industry, and our legal counsel are working right now to make sure that we are communicating effectively with our elected representatives, with the mayor and the board of supervisors, to let them know where the legislation is unclear and where we need further clarification, or where it's frankly, just illegal and can't be supported. So, we're working on that, but at this point, we're simply holding on and waiting to see what happens in May. And, right now, as I said, I think at this point in the month, there's not as much to talk about. We did actually, we have a little bit of activity on the leasing front. Our apartment upstairs from the office has received some interest, and we had a couple of people who were interested. We have had tenants inquiring about that unit and sort of insisting that they would only like it if the rent came down a little bit. And we did have several groups of people who were interested, and we have a lease out. So we're hoping that we actually get something rented. We have another unit that's on the market right now, and we had an interested party who contacted us and said, wow, it looks really great. I really like, the building looks nice, and it looks really great. And I like the outdoor space, and do you accept Section 8? And we said, okay, well, the answer to that is if you meet the financial criteria, we'll consider the concept, but no, we're not going to be considering a Section 8 contract at this time. Our client isn't interested in signing that contract, and financially, a person with a Section 8 voucher is not going to be able to qualify. I wish that we could work more constructively with the federal government in that regard. Who knows? Maybe things will start to change at HUD, and these Section 8 contracts may be a little bit more favorable to landlords in the near future. But right now, it's still a pretty onerous process to try to work with them. Most of the time, the rent is late, and it's difficult to just get the basic needs met. So that's not something that we're particularly interested in pursuing at this time. At the very beginning, for anybody who wasn't here, I was discussing a Los Angeles Times editorial that I saw and was shared by the San Francisco Apartment Association that was in their paper today, that basically supports all of us and says, it's not just renters, landlords need help too. And I'm going to put this link in the group chat here. And if you want to check it out, you can do that. And I will also share this around in the comments for the video when that is published. But it says in this editorial, renters need help, but so do landlords. We want landlords to stay in business. They provide an essential service, a roof over one's head. And most of you, pretty much all of you, fit into this category. It says most landlords are small business owners who rely on rent payments for their income or retirement. Nearly 3/4 of apartment properties in the U.S. are owned by individuals, not corporations or investor groups, and most apartment buildings have only a handful of units. In California, about half of rentals are in properties with 5 units or less. If 2 tenants in a small complex can't pay the rent, that's a serious financial hit. So, this goes farther, and I think as we go through all of this, hopefully legislatively we will find some ways to address everybody's concerns and figure out how to relieve the burden on landlords as well as their tenants. But all of us are doing our best to make sure that we're taking care of the people that pay the rent and pay our bills. So, yeah.
Did you want to mention the new virtual tour technology? Any comments or feedback since?
We've had some success, as I said. I think the virtual tour had something to do with our getting the apartment upstairs a little bit more interest. We're going to keep pushing that, and we're working on a rigorous protocol for what our showing procedure will look like in the future, at least until we're pretty clear that this threat has been neutralized. We'll be working on a description of what the cleaning procedure needs to look like and how the apartments will be shown. We will work with you. Once I have the procedure all put together, we'll be sending it out to everybody and getting each client who has a vacant unit to agree that the best thing to do is to show the units. And unfortunately, I think after each showing, we're going to have to disinfect, and that's going to cost money, and we're going to have to spell that out. But I'm going to work on the details of that, and we'll figure it out in the next week or so. So that's the future of rentals. It's going to be more expensive and time consuming to make sure that we're not letting people who are infected into the apartment to then spread the virus to everybody else. So it's going to be interesting.
JJ?
Yes.
Bert, can I ask a question of you?
Yeah.
Joel and I were in the Golden Gate Breakfast Club meeting this morning and talked about the virus's time before it's safe.
Right.
If you've got a place that you're going to be in there and then it's going to be empty for 3 or 4 days after that, you may not need to do the detailed cleaning because the virus is gone by that time. Right. They can't live that long. So just a consideration of that. It sounds like that's the situation with your building.
Well, it could be. And, the idea would be, if we're pretty sure it's going to be empty if we want to guarantee that it's going to be empty for 5 days or a week, to be absolutely sure, you miss out on the opportunity to show it. Obviously, if a place is being shown multiple times over the course of a week, you've got good interest and it may be worth the extra cost. But it's got to take a half an hour, 45 minutes to do a scrub down. Even if we do have rubber gloves and masks and things that people can use and toss out when they're done, when they come through the apartment, even if we only let 2 people in there, I think at the very least, we're going to have the disinfectants, and we're going to have to disinfect the door locks, the front door, the handrails, all the surfaces that are contacted as a result of somebody walking through the apartment. We might have to tell people, don't touch the appliances, don't touch anything that's not, try not to touch things. Try to leave the doors open, and there's no reason necessarily why people need to touch the washing machine or the dishwasher or the stove when they come walk through an apartment. So perhaps that's part of the instructions. But if people want to say, gee, I'm only going to show the unit once a week to avoid spending a couple of dollars on cleaning, that's also a trade-off.
JJ,
so, yeah.
First of all, I've lost the picture from the middle of the Zoom. I don't know why, but you're just in the side. The other question though I have is with the can't we just say if you want to see a unit when you show up, you come with a mask and we could
We
also.
can ask them to come with their own mask. We have rubber gloves. We would open the door, you know, whoever is showing it would open the door and hold the door open for them and let them walk in. Hopefully they tread lightly. They don't touch a lot of stuff. But yes, we can certainly require that people bring their own mask, but at the same time, we're not going to want to find ourselves in a position where we're telling people, well, I'm not going to show you this apartment because you didn't bring a mask. So we may have to find and provide some disposable masks as a backstop just in case. We can certainly ask them. We'll have them sign the disclosure that CAR provided before they go inside. So, you know, that's important, but, you know, it's complicated.
Yeah, and then how are you going to do maintenance?
Well, right now we're doing maintenance similar to the way we've done it in the past, except that the vendors can't pick up keys at the office anymore. They have to make appointments with the tenants. Now, that's not necessarily a big trade-off for anybody right now because everybody's basically at home. So the vendors are being sent the work orders and then they're coordinating their own schedules and visiting with the tenants at that time. My maintenance staff are showing up with, they have actual like respirators for working in asbestos, and they show up with that, and they show up with gloves, and they have their, you know, branded work shirts with their name on it. And so they show up and say, you know, I'm here for your maintenance request, and they can do the work and get out. We've had a lower volume of this work, and we've had our guys working on, you know, interior apartment paint jobs, which wouldn't normally be something that would be cost effective to have that labor working on because they are typically more expensive than I would like to pay for hourly work. So I'm billing at, you know, the painter's rate, which is less than what I'd like to have. But it keeps my guys, you know, operating. And when it comes to, you know, future stuff, I mean, I've had days this month where, you know, my guys are out of work to do because tenants aren't requesting as much, you know, gee, my towel bar in the bathroom is loose. Can you fix that? Because they don't really want people in their house to do maintenance. And so, you know, when people are going to start to feel more comfortable with asking for maintenance and feel a little more comfortable with having people in their house, I would think in the next, you know, month or so. And, you know, we may get back to normal on that regard, but it's going to be a long time before we're checking out keys again. And it's going to be a while before I think the rental market picks up. Let's see, maintenance. You know, the other thing I may end up having my maintenance guys do is that cleaning after each showing of the apartment, because at the very least, they're the most flexible labor that I have available for me, you know, so that we can tell them, you know, we have a showing at 2 o'clock on Tuesday. Can you be there at 2 o'clock when we do the showing and do the cleaning when it's over?
Are you going to, this is an awkward question, but are you going to assume that every time the crew goes in someplace that there has been an incident of virus in the unit, or how do you deal with that? Are you going to ask the tenants, has there been any virus in your house?
Well, we haven't asked them yet, but we haven't done a whole lot of maintenance either. I mean, I think that's a good approach to say, you know, you don't feel sick, you don't have any symptoms, and you haven't had any exposure. Yeah.
It'd be the same as asking if you have a dog that bites going into your apartment. So,
yeah. Do you have a virus that bites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But okay.
Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions people might have. You know, these calls in the middle of the month are going to be a little less full of pregnant ideas and new information. Josh is here as well to talk a little bit about sales and leasing. If you have anything new you want to add about procedures or what's going on in the market, you're welcome to join us as well.
Yeah, from the sales side, I do have my commercial listing, mixed-use building on the market. I'm still getting requests to see it. So there's still people kind of poking around. My sense is that people are continuing to shop, but not necessarily buy. They're getting ready for things to settle down and the credit markets to settle down and the virus to pass and all those things. So I'm feeling good in that I am still getting activity on this mixed-use building. I'm able to show it the vacant commercial spaces via lockbox without a problem, and then we disinfect upon people leaving. So basically, the market is frozen. I'm talking to a lot of my colleagues in the industry, and most people are pulling their listings off the market. Most deals are on hold, and then the ones that are were already in motion are kind of staying in motion. Some of them, but I was encouraged this week in that I'm still seeing people poking around and inquiring. So I think I get that feeling that people are looking forward to getting back in and being active again.
That's good. I think it seems like overnight the virus and the shelter-in-place order sort of turned a pretty good seller's market into a buyer's market, and hopefully, we'll have. Right now, as I said with the leasing, we did have a few people coming out looking at our apartment and saying, gee, I'd like it if the price came down to this, down from $3,250 to $3,100 or something, which that's within the range of what I'd normally negotiate anyway, if necessary. But we were able to get a good offer, and I think a lot of the buyers in the market, as well as the tenants looking to lease, are certainly aware of their bargaining power, and we have to be prepared to discuss reductions. And if tenants are able to be the only one looking at a particular unit, and they're well qualified, in the circumstance that we just had, the tenants had a tech job and job in accounting. So these are not industries that I think, and they're well-paid jobs. They're not necessarily industries or particular jobs that would necessarily be necessary to lay people off as a result of the shelter-in-place. They can work remotely. So hopefully that works out well. I mean, there is a much higher risk that we rent to somebody now and they lose their job next month, and we're digging deeper into their employment to verify that they are still fully employed and that it's a recent pay stub. It's not one from 2 weeks ago, their last pay stub from before they lost their job, and they're coming to us trying to rent. So, we're looking into those things and trying to be proactive on that.
Yeah, I'll be tracking the market, especially on the commercial side, to see if cap rates are going up. So if prices are dropping, and if there are buying opportunities, and we'll be sharing those with our clients as well. Keeping a close eye on that. It will be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if people wait it out, pull their properties off the market, or move forward and try to get a discount, or accept a discount. I would say they're not trying to get a discount, but so that'll be interesting, and I'll be tracking that.
Any questions that people have, I'm happy to open for discussion, and anybody on the call who's interested, I'm happy to just have a discussion. And I'm also available if anybody wants to send me an email or call me. I can certainly do one-on-one talks, or answer specific questions that people might have. keep an eye on your email. I'll continue to send out the updates. Definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel if you want to refer to these videos from these calls moving forward. And everybody stay healthy, stay home, and don't touch your face. And we'll wash your hands a lot, don't touch your face, and don't talk to a lot of people in person.
I'm just interested in finding out if in developing this fourth pass-through through Congress, if they're going to include some sympathy for landlords in that bill.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the easiest way to do that is by supporting the banks to provide forbearance or restructuring. One of our clients who was on, I think it was Friday's call, shared that a large bank in another state had been offering a variety of options with regard to forbearance. That it was like, well, if you want to pay interest only for the next 6 months, we'll just amortize it, and add it to the overall balance of the loan. And there was another option that involved no payments at all, and something, I don't remember what it was, but they were pretty reasonable options, and it seemed like it was starting to be more fully formed to the point where it was something you could actually consider, and you could look at your expenses, you could look at your income, and you could say, I think I could, get by with, this arrangement. And so I think the government will have to help be the backstop to the banks to help them to deal with the interruption in their cash flow as a result of the interruption in our cash flow. But I think that's the path forward, and it's going to take longer for us to get that assurance than it will for the Board of Supervisors to give tenants the assurance that they won't be evicted.
And nothing from Chase yet, right, JJ? You haven't
I haven't heard
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
Nothing from Chase about anything we're involved in, not in San Francisco.
Yeah. The residential market has been really fast about
Yes.
the forbearances, but
Yeah.
commercial market is
Commercial market, they're a little slower. Yes.
different ball of wax.
Yes.
So you don't have a lot of 30-day notices now coming in.
Not a ton, not as many as I would expect, but once again, I'm going to be expecting more as this grinds on. I mean, we get past the initial shock, and I remember how shocking it was, when the shelter in place was issued, and I'm going, oh man, this is reality. And that was 2 weeks to April, a little more than 2 weeks, and people were thinking, okay, I can get through this. And as it grinds on and it lasts longer and longer and longer, I really think people are getting wearier. As much as they're adjusting to it, I think financially people are getting tired and they're getting weary and they're running out of resources. And I hope that the resources that are being made available, the unemployment, are helping, but $1,200 a week is not going to cut it for most people to support their family and pay San Francisco rent. It's difficult.
I just saw the mayor on television, and it looks like this is not going to end in May.
No.
And things are changing very, very quickly. Apparently, she's just junked her gross receipts tax. And she hasn't thrown it out, but she says, well, we're going back to the drawing board, because she knows ain't no way she's going to get anything out of a stone.
Gross receipts, so you get a percentage of zero is zero.
Zero.
You're going to get zero on your gross receipts. Good. Yeah. Those receipts are pretty gross. Yeah. That was a good idea. And I still can't wait to hear what Aaron Peskin has to say about his vacant storefront tax.
Yeah.
How are you going to enforce that?
Yeah, sure.
Tax everybody who's got a vacant storefront now. There's 6, 8, 10 of them on Valencia Street, just between 16th and 17th, in one block. When I take the kids out for a walk in the afternoon, we go down Valencia Street and count the storefronts, and it's dismal. It's sad.
Wow.
Yeah, this is terrible.
And the ones that stay open are getting vandalized. I went by Arizmendi's Bakery in my neighborhood, and their windows, they're still open from 9 to 4, and their windows got smashed.
Oh, I hear that. Oh.
So it's kind of chaos out there. So hopefully it doesn't continue to deteriorate.
Yeah,
We'll see.
we'll see.
Well, thank you.
JJ, I have a question. Tom
Yes.
Dreyer.
Oh, hey Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. So, and I'm sorry I missed a portion of this because I had another Zoom call I was on in the other
It's
room.
okay.
But so, if you had to guess, what percentage of the tenants are employed in relatively insulated industries such as technology? And in your opinion, is that insulated based on the feedback you're getting from tenants that might have been calling you in the last few weeks?
Well, I get the feeling most of the tenants that I've rented to in the last 5 years or so are pretty well insulated. I haven't had a lot of really recent tenants who are telling me they can't pay the rent. So most of our recent tenants are pretty well set. I think we're having greater trouble with tenants who are longer term tenants who have a lower rent, and I can tell that they are in a service industry or an industry that is difficult. People in less expensive neighborhoods are having more trouble. Obviously, people who make less money tend to live in neighborhoods where the rents are lower.
Yeah.
As far as the percentage, I can't really say, but with only 6% of tenants who weren't able to pay the rent and needed forbearance in the residential units, I'm just going to have to wait and see what happens next month. But I think in San Francisco, with the cost of housing being as high as it is, a lot of the service-based employees don't live here. They commute from elsewhere. And so that effect is seen elsewhere than right here in the city, or at least it's seen in the more the lower rent neighborhoods, the southern parts of the city or the western parts.
Mm-hmm. I'm just reflecting on the 2008-9 financial crisis, and I'm a broker in Marin County, so we saw, the first people to get the shock were the ones that were service people that had bought a house they couldn't afford to begin with,
right,
with the cheap loan. I mean, the free loan approval, and then 2 years or so into that recession, which was I call it a real estate depression, by the way. It may have been a great recession for most, but it was a real estate depression in many parts of the country, of course. At any rate, though, 2 years into it, the well-off, what I call mid-level, upper middle class, entry-level rich people started to feel the burn, started to look at their cash reserves, whether it was their 401ks or their overall savings and the burn rate of that, and they were pushed into selling.
right.
No, not large. I would say maybe it was only 15% of the homeowners, but it was those people that ended up on the market were not recreational sellers. They were really need-based selling.
Right. And I think the contrast between that recession, where the driver of that recession was a banking collapse that affected mostly people who had capital, who had cash, who had good jobs, and the ripple effect was felt by people at the lower levels of the income scale as a result of the people at the upper level not being able to spend and invest as much money. It's sort of reversed in this, because I really feel like the upper income people are not as likely to lose their jobs. The tech workers, the people with jobs that are still needed, white collar work, stuff that can be done over the internet is not stuff that we're seeing being as negatively affected. And it's all the businesses that have had to close and can't continue to make the payroll that they had with low to immediate salary or wage employees, and they're feeling it first. And so, you know, it's a reverse of that previous real estate depression.
Mm-hmm.
On the,
Well,
on
thanks
the
for
news
the
this
comment.
morning, it said that Google and Apple are hiring.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and Zoom is hiring. If anybody wants a job, Zoom could probably use help. You know, Amazon's hiring package delivery people, I'm sure. But you know, those are, that's an interesting cross section, but you know, food service isn't hiring, for sure. Bars and restaurants are not doing well, and we may not be able to have large, you know, sporting events and things until some point this time next year. I mean, we're not going to see the baseball season at all. We're not going to see any more basketball for this year. We may not see football this year. And you know, that those are all, you know, really serious hits to the economy. You know, people who have businesses that make money on, you know, the 81 games at AT&T Park in Merkle Park for the Giants. You know, all those bars and restaurants aren't going to be making any money. So the ripples are immense. You can see how interconnected our economy really is.
Or your gig workers.
Yeah, I mean, the gig workers are going to be affected too, that's for sure. But, you know, people are still, I guess, people are still using Lyft when they absolutely have to. Bert, interesting to see the head of the MTA say, you know, if you need to get around, you should probably take your car. He said, under normal circumstances, I'd never say that. But.
Well, this qualified that. He says you should probably walk and bike or take your car.
That's
right.
right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I'll qualify that a little bit. So
well, I walked to the office today. I walked. I didn't take the car.
The weather did anything to have watched Bert's face when he came on stage and said that. Anything.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy to think that BART ridership is down 95% and they're cutting back service dramatically. And that all the uni lines have been cut completely. They're just not running. So it's pretty crazy.
Yeah, the thing that I find curious is that for the gig workers, there is a desperate need of people to pick up groceries and deliver and that sort of stuff. And it's hard for me to understand, you know, that's a pretty easy thing to get into. If you get laid off from somewhere, you can probably get into that pretty easily because there's a real shortage in that area. That maybe take a month or two to do it, but if that's certainly be the next few months, that's going to replace an awful lot of other workers. I mean, other traditional workers with new jobs. So I think these are not high-end people, obviously.
No.
But it's not all dismal.
Instacart definitely was hiring almost immediately, middle of March, for grocery deliveries, and you know, that's not a great job, and it is you know, let's be clear, that's also a job that puts people at the lower end of the wage scale at greater risk of being exposed to the virus and spreading it throughout the population. I mean, that's a risk as well. But you know, we have to sort of balance the risks of our lives. It's probably less risky than going to the grocery store to order delivery, and you know, we all need groceries. We need to eat.
Has anybody? Well, I'm sure you've noticed if you live in San Francisco, the stunning lack of tourists and what that feels like. I got to say, I'm enjoying that.
Yes.
I live in this city. I walk around, and I'll tell you, there's a distinct lack of people in this city.
Yeah, everybody's inside. And it's encouraging to see that people are actually heeding the warnings. I have a friend who came back to San Francisco from New York over on Friday, and she said the airport was completely empty and there were only 20 people on an airplane from New York City to San Francisco. And it smelled so badly, so strongly of cleaning solution that it was burning her eyes. And they even called her as she was arriving at the airport. They called and said, you know, are you really coming on the trip? We want to make sure, because people are canceling on us at last minute, we want to make sure that there are enough people, you know, that any of the people are going to be flying.
Wow.
And, you know, so that's, and the airport was completely empty. She sent a picture of the airport with nobody in it at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Well,
That's
it's
amazing.
absolutely working. As of yesterday, I noticed that San Francisco only had 15 fatalities from the virus. So
Right.
it's definitely doing the job it's intended to. Now we need to work on the steps that Governor Newsom talked about.
I hope so. And I also think, you know, it's important that we're doing this for the first responders who are on the front line, for our healthcare workers, so that they're not inundated by it. And I listen to the things that I hear from people in the media from other states saying things like, you know, I don't want to give up my freedom for this, and, you know, I'll just take the risk. And it's not even about you. It's not about your freedom. It's about, you know, the people who are going to help those who get sick. And it's about doing what's right for the community as a whole. So, you know, this is complicated, and it requires us to come together while we're staying apart. Very difficult thing to do.
Well, okay, so here's a practical question. If you had a call from a tenant, one of your tenants, and there was a plumbing problem, for example, that required immediate attention, would you deploy the plumber as normal, or would there be some other protocols to do that?
Well, we're deploying the plumber, and, you know, we talked earlier on the call about, you know, asking whether people have had symptoms or had exposure, and we're not doing that at the moment. But we're also not checking out keys, and our vendors are making their own appointments and making sure that there's somebody in the house when they go there. We had a big decrease in the amount of maintenance that was being requested when this first happened, and it sort of bounced back a little bit. But, you know, especially for handyman work, which is mostly, you know, routine maintenance that can be delayed or you know, people can forget about it for a little while. We had a lot less of that, but, you know, the volume of plumbing related issues came back to normal pretty quickly. And so we're just handling them a little differently.
Thank you.
You know, JJ, it might not be a bad idea to have your plumber carry a thermometer, you know, the one that you just point and it gives the temperature. That would protect both the tenants and the plumber. That's done all over Europe.
Yeah, that's a good idea. You know, can you imagine how weird that would be? You have the plumber or the handyman car is like, I need to check your temperature, please. But it's a good idea. It's a good idea. I thought about looking for a couple of those online. I wonder if they're available.
Probably.
Well, that's. I think that sounds good for today. If anybody has any more questions, I'm happy to answer them offline or on another call. We'll do this again on Friday afternoon at 3 o'clock. I'll have Denise Ledbetter with us to talk about where we stand politically and legally. And hopefully we will have some slight resolution to the questions that we have, but look forward to seeing everybody then. And check out the YouTube channel, the Smart Apartment Advisor YouTube channel. Subscribe there for the video of each of these calls. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care and stay healthy, stay safe, wash your hands, don't touch your face.
Thank you, JJ.
Bye, JJ.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.